Okay, what's happening, MJ Intuitive? I want to talk about. I recently listened to this Audible book called Unlabeled by Mark Echo. And if you're not familiar with who Mark Echo is, he's a clothing designer, has a clothing brand, $1 billion clothing brand with all the licenses, and um, and he's into a lot more than clothing now as well. However, I used to have a lot of resentment against Mark Echo because Gary and I were both in the urban contemporary market at the same time that he was, and he was just kicking our ass. I mean, if we were supplying 1,000 stores, he was supplying 10,000 stores. If we were supplying, you know, $3 million, I mean, if our revenue was 3 million, his revenue was 30 million. I mean, he was just kicking our ass, and I had just a tremendous amount of resentment. But I was, as I was listening to the Audible, it was extraordinary because I felt like we went through the same stuff. Like his stories and the stories that Gary and I went through were like. I mean, they weren't identical, but they were just, there were so many things that we shared in common. And here's my point. In February of '96, Gary and I gave up. We threw in the towel. We were in a very bad situation, and we decided to throw in the towel. And Mark Echo had about 10 lives and was in a gazillion situations like we were. You know, the difference was we gave up. So I called Gary and I said, you know, listen, when we threw in the towel back in '96 in our first business, you know, B&W, did we have to quit? Did we have to quit? And the short answer is no, we didn't. And let me tell you why. Number one, when you have a business, okay, and if you're deciding whether to continue or not, think about a couple of things. Number one, do you have proof of concept? Have you developed traction in the market? Do you have some sort of revenue, some good clients in your hip pocket, distribution? And with us, we had all those things. So when you have the traction in the market, and you have the clients and all this stuff that I mentioned, there's no reason to quit. There's always ways to take it, you know, to try to either reduce your overhead or realign yourself with a new strategic partner, or get a strategic partner if you haven't had one already, or secure more financing and or capital, or bring in a key person into the company that, you know, gives you strengths where your weaknesses are. There's so many different ways to better your company. Now, conversely, if you have a company that has no proof of concept, has no traction in the market, you haven't gotten any clients or any paying customers, you have no real revenue to speak of, then I would say, you know, that's another story. I would question whether or not, you know, quite simply, it's possible that the product or service you created, customers don't want. And that's okay, because most entrepreneurs don't get it right the first time. One thing that I would strongly recommend when you develop a product or service, and I've mentioned this a million times before, is don't create what you want. Create what the customers want. And do your due diligence and see not only what the customers want, but figure out a way to develop a product or service that gives enough differentiation so they buy your product as opposed to somebody else's. So the bottom line is we didn't have to give up. We had all the things going for us. We just it would have been a little difficult, but that's what business is about. I suggest reading the book. It's a great book, Unlabeled by Mark Echo. I still do not know him, so I'm recommending it because I simply think it's a great way to understand the journey that you will be on as an entrepreneur if you're just getting into the being an entrepreneur for the first time. So with that being said, have a great day, and we'll talk later.